Angus Brayshaw played for Melbourne at the MCG, and then Fremantle played with Andrew playing after him. So the two brothers lost at the same venue on the same day. I think their family's in Melbourne, so they wasted a whole day.
I just Googled, he was one of 7 people from my high school to get drafted that year, apparently.
Strong high school team.
Andrew Brayshaw, Luke Davies, I can never pronounce that, Uniacke.
Yeah.
Aidan Bonar, Oscar Claverani, I can't pronounce
Claverino.
that. Chook Constable, Hamish Brayshaw.
Chook Constable.
Charlie Constable.
Apparently his nickname's Chook because he eats too many chickens and he's a bit overweight, so they call him Chook.
He played good in the VFL the weekend.
He got 40 touches or something, but they want to play Luke Delhouse, who literally can't get a kick instead.
Yes, he's a mystery.
I hate Luke Delhouse. Just irritates me. I don't get his value add. Just watching him play, it's just like he just doesn't seem to do anything.
He must do something defensively because offensively he doesn't do a lot.
Yeah, he's like a non-offensive, mysteriously non-defensive small forward that doesn't kick goals. I don't really get it.
He doesn't even set them up.
He must just lead to space and generate opportunities for others in a way that I can't detect.
He's a decoy.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Unnecessary Statness podcast, brought to you by the team from Useless AFL Stats Facebook page, bringing you the AFL's weird, bizarre, and totally irrelevant stats you never asked for and never knew you needed, with Liam Crowy Crowhurst, Bill the Bulldog Skelton, and Aaron Della Delaporte.
Luke Delhouse has just inspired me to look into a stat. So
yeah, same.
he got 35 Brownlow votes for the Bulldogs. And then came to Geelong and he's got 0. I wonder what the most Brownlow votes someone's gotten for a club and then has gotten 0 to the club they went to. You need some sort of minimum games threshold, but what was the one you were looking at?
He went from number 40 at Western Bulldogs to number 6 and then back to number 40 at Geelong.
Oh, he did too.
We might do a little recap of the round. There was plenty of stuff that caught our eye. Do you want to kick us off, Bill?
Yes. I did have a look at all of the teams throughout history that have gone back-to-back and looked at their fate in the year after they went back-to-back. They have a chance of getting history here. So the worst result ever after going back-to-back is Adelaide, who came 13th after going back-to-back. Essendon currently sitting in 9th. It is possible that they can finish 13th to equal the record or go lower. So we have to keep quite a close eye on that for the rest of the regular season. But I'll be barracking against Richmond for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be in that boat. We like to see teams that haven't won one for a while come up, but 3 out of the last 4 is probably a bit too much. They can certainly go back down for what it's worth.
Yes, and 9th, if anyone is interested, is the second worst. So they are currently in the second worst position. So they're close to the record, but not quite there yet as the worst ever back-to-back team in the year after they went back-to-back.
I wanted to have a chat about the King brothers because they obviously had back-to-back wins over Richmond, which I thought was pretty cool. And being twins, I believe there's been 6 sets of twins by AFL, and to my surprise, every set of twins has actually had back-to-back wins against the same team at some point during their careers. And the Kings have joined Adam and Troy Selwood as being the only twins to do it against the reigning premiers. So well done to them. And of course, Ben kicked the sealer for Gold Coast and gave them their first ever win against reigning premiers.
That seems very unusual to me, yet it's happened every set of twins.
Yep, the College Asneys have done it, the Loneys,
so
of course, the Wakelins.
Is it outrageous then to sort of suggest the AFL is scheduling twins to play back-to-back against the same team? This feels deliberate.
Surprisingly, they've actually had a lot more wins than losses. I don't have the exact twin stats in front of me, but they didn't have many back-to-back losses amongst them. A lot of wins, and some of those players didn't have that highly decorated careers either. I mean, Adam Selwood and Troy Selwood were at Brisbane and West Coast, but it wasn't in their best period of time at those 2 clubs. I think there's something in the DNA when the twins have one win, the other one follows through the next week.
Got it on good authority that the Selwood parents are very competitive lawn bowlers throughout regional Victoria. So there's a competitive edge in that family for sure. Came out more in Joel perhaps than the others.
You've also got Scott. Got to feel sorry for Adam being and Troy being the 3rd and 4th best Selwoods And they had reasonably good careers, considering the average player only plays probably a handful of games in AFL.
Yeah, it's a very tough family to break into. So it's
What caught your eye across the weekend there, Liam?
a doubleheader at the MCG only comes around once every 40 years or so. The last time being 1986, Anzac Day. There was a doubleheader. But what was particularly special about this one is that Angus and Andrew Brayshaw were the first set of brothers to lose in different teams on the MCG on the same day, which is quite amazing. Not only for there to be two teams playing at the MCG on the same day, but to also be brothers. So congratulations to them. But I don't believe they're twins.
No, they're not.
No,
They're definitely not.
I've had a long-standing theory that every game should be played at the MCG. As a MCC member, I've felt that way for a long time. So back-to-back is a good start, but I would like to see the league move towards having all 9 games a week there, just sort of scattered from Thursday to Monday for me.
Well, I'd be happy with that. I'd be able to watch every game without flicking back to another one that's overlapping with it. So, yeah, well done to the Brayshaws. I'm not sure if any family members went along, but that was a long and painful day for them if they did. Now, I thought I'd touch on Silk Burgoyne, or Silk as he's known, coming up with his 400th game on the weekend. Obviously, only 4 other players have done this, so an amazing achievement. We did do a little video on Silk with some of his useless stats. If you want to check that out, it's on our Facebook. I've actually got another one, which we didn't mention in the video, but he is the only one of those 5 that played 400 games and not have his coach sacked at any point in his career. So obviously he started with Mark Williams at Port Adelaide. And then when he left Port, the next year Mark Williams got sacked. I think it was about round 15. He got sacked from Port, but then obviously he was over at Hawthorn with Alistair Clarkson, and he's still going with Alistair Clarkson. So maybe if Burgoyne retires, that might be the end of Alistair Clarkson.
He's sort of the opposite of the coach killer.
Yeah, he's the coach sticker. Of course, Lance Buddy Franklin is also another past the 300 games. He's never had a coach sacked either. So pretty rare for someone to go. I mean, Burgoyne's gone 20 years and Franklin's pushing up to 15 or 16 years. So long careers without.
Would a coach retiring count or would that enable a player to sort of break that record if a coach retired on their own accord?
I've labelled it in with sackings and retirements, so never happened.
I think this is just a testament to Silk Burgoyne's ability to leave a club before it truly turns bad. You know, before the whole sacking of the coach and all of that. Obviously, with Port Adelaide, the Choco Williams into kind of the Matthew Primus era. I reckon Silk Burgoyne knew something was happening and decided, I'm going to go to a premiership winning dynasty. So if anything, it's great football managerial nous that Silk Burgoyne has had, sticking with Alistair Clarkson for so long.
Yeah, truly a shrewd operator.
I've got a memory of Hawthorn sort of saying, we just want 2 years out of you, Silk. If we can just get 2 years out of you, we'll be happy with the deal. And he's obviously lasted, 10 or 12 years at Hawthorn?
Yeah, he had a real banged up knee. He was on crutches. So yeah, amazing effort.
Yeah, he's just pulling up on 11 years at Hawthorn.
We had a question come through, and it was actually in the comments on the post about Burgoyne, our little video we did. Who was most likely to be the next player to get to 400 games? So I did a bit of trolling through current players to come up with a top 5 of who I think might be the next. And here they are in most likely to the least likely, perhaps. And I've got Scott Pendlebury, currently on 331 games. David Mundy's got the most games at the moment, but I don't think he can get to the 400, whereas I think Scott Pendlebury can. He is currently 33 years old, so he just needs 3 full seasons. Hopefully no injuries for him, and the rest of this year he can just sneak to that 400, but I even think he could go on for another 4th season if his body holds up. So that'd get him to 37, and he'd accomplish that. In a similar boat, sitting at 2nd, I've got Joel Selwood, who's on 325 games, and he's also 33. He's a very flexible player. I think he could probably play halfback or half forward if he really wanted to. Despite all the bandages he wears, he doesn't get injured very often. So if his body can hold up, he can get there for sure. Third, I've got Dustin Martin. He's played 257 games, and I did a little comparison with Burgoyne, who was on 221 at the same stage of his career. So Dusty's actually got 30-odd games ahead of him. He doesn't miss many. He misses the odd one every now and then, but he's never had a serious injury. So if he keeps going, he's right on track. In fourth spot, Andrew Gath. He's currently played 229 games. He missed last week with a finger injury, but he's 1 year behind Dusty and only 20-odd games, so he's right on track. And in fifth spot, I've got Clayton Oliver, who's played 114 games, but he's yet to turn 24. If we
Still needs to play another 260 games.
Yeah, but if you run the projections, he plays for 13 years.
What about an 18-year-old that's played 15 of 15? Do you reckon if you run the projections, they'll get to 400?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Oliver's at least put in 25% of the way. But I've got some speculators. I've got Sam Walsh, Bailey Smith, and Jack Lukosius, who are all 21 years or younger. Bailey Smith hasn't turned 21 yet, and they've all played 50 games. So again, running the projections and the potential there for like a Bailey Smith or maybe a Walsh is that they could play a lot of finals. Even Lukosius potentially could play a lot of finals if Gold Coast somehow get into the winning mode. They've all got the potential to get there anyway.
Yeah, I think this also comes back to a special case like Tim Watson, let's say, debuted at the age of 16, played 16 games in his first year, but only went on to 307 games. That might be a bit of a factor. You know, they start off really good, as Tim Watson does, and maybe someone like a Dustin Fletcher starts off really young, that the AFL might actually need to lower the entry threshold from 18. I believe they changed it recently, but I believe it's 18 now, but they need to re-lower it back to 16 to get more players in early that can then beat this 400 game threshold.
You mentioned Clayton Oliver. Quickly breeze past it, but my favourite stat about Clayton Oliver at the moment is that of all current players, if you look at his disposals per game before and after dark, he has the largest disposal rise once the sun goes down. I think it's fair to say that he's a sort of pale-skinned kind of redhead that may not love the sun. So I think if Melbourne wants to get the most out of Oliver and maybe if he can win a Brownlow, they need to be petitioning the AFL for more night games because he's averaging 30 after dark and only 27 during the day.
Now, boys, I'm just going to play a little bit of vision. Hopefully this comes through well on the speakers.
Vision or audio?
Sets himself across again, got hands onto it. Drew, good hands over the top. Rosie normally finishes pretty well, gives off the handball. Frederick steps inside Burgoyne. Frederick fires and goals.
So that was Martin Frederick, who was a sub for Port, and he was playing in just his sixth game of AFL, obviously kicking his first goal there. And you'll notice in the call that he sold a bit of candy to the old man Burgoyne. Yep. It's pretty amazing, your sixth game kicking your first goal. That's a story he'll be able to tell the grandkids. Doesn't matter if he only plays one more game.
Yeah, Martin Frederick with 3 sub-ons and 3 starting appearances, currently at 50%. We'll keep an eye on that, see how far he can get, keeping it at a 50% sub-on rate.
His effort actually relates to something that I achieved. Now, we've talked about our footy prowess and how we were all pretty useless players, but I don't know if you guys know this, and I'm pretty sure you won't, is that I've actually beaten a champion in a sporting endeavour.
Where are we going now? With Della as he takes us on a tangent.
This happened in, of all the places, at Bali, and they have the Waterbomb Park. Have you ever been or heard about Waterbomb Park? It's like a huge adventure playground.
I've not.
Anyway, no, it's like a huge theme park, but just lots and lots of water slides. So I was at the top of one of the biggest water slides there, and with a couple of my stepkids, and there was 2 slides, and we were lining up, and I looked across to the other slide, and I could hear this squeaky voice. When I looked over there to see who this squeaky voice was, because it sounded familiar, it was actually Damien Oliver, the Melbourne Cup winning jockey, and he had a couple of his kids there. Being the competitive person I am, I lined my kids up so that I would be water sliding against Damien Oliver. So we're at the top of this probably 70-metre water slide, and I have the red light and then it goes green. I had it perfectly lined up, so I got Damien Oliver, and I'm probably, unfortunately, about double Damien's weight, so perhaps I had the advantage, but that light went green. I shot myself down that slide. As soon as I hit the bottom, about 10 seconds later, I looked up and he was still coming down, so I kicked his ass on the water slide. And I was pretty happy about it, I can tell you.
Yeah, weight, I can say from experience, the weight is definitely an advantage, and I think you've got him well covered there.
Could you tell that he was like, did he have one eye looking at you at the peripheral? Did he seem like an instinctive racer that wanted to win, or you're not really on his radar at all?
Well, I tried to eye him off. I was going to stare him down, but I don't think he had any idea whatsoever what was going on. I wanted to give him a few words after I beat him, but I thought better of it, and I just let him go on his way. But I went back to the missus and I said, I just beat Damien Oliver in a water slide race, and she's like, who does he play for? And I started trying to explain that he was actually a jockey, but then I pretty much gave up. But yeah, that's my grandkids' story. So while Martin Frederick can tell his about sidestepping Silk, I've got that one in my kit bag.
I never know how you're going to connect those back to the topic at hand, but you're a bit of a master of the long-winded story. I love it.
Do you want a stat, Della?
Yeah, sure.
This weekend, we also had some Supercoach top scorers. Sean Darcy, 193, and Darcy Parish, 190, combining for 383. So if you put their names together, Sean Darcy Parish. I've had a look through the record books to see what else comes up within the same round, and there's some quite interesting names that pop up. In the top 3 spots for a round, we have the same players. We have Kieran Jack Rewalt with 150, 187. For a total of 337.
Not bad.
And they have the top 3 spots: 2012 round 10, 2010 round 12, and 2010 round 21.
Excellent.
And if we look at the bottom of the leaderboard, of course,
that's where we probably should have started there.
We probably should have started down here. We have Jack Martin Gleeson. Jack Martin with 5 and Martin Gleeson with 13.
They could have both been subs.
Yeah, 2015 round 9. But in second bottom spot, back in 2012 round 3, we have Jeremy Cameron O'Shea with Jeremy Cameron with 18 and O'Shea with 1 for a total of 19.
It's a bad game for Jeremy Cameron.
He must have only played a couple of minutes.
Exactly.
I've become a lifelong fan of Jeremy Cameron.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I also had to look for within the same game. So not just within the same round, but within the same game. And the lowest is quite high when you think about it. We have Bailey Dale Morris. Bailey Dale with 1 vote and Dale Morris with 46 for 47. So that's the lowest within the same game. 2015 round 19, Western Bulldogs versus Port Adelaide.
Well, Bailey Dale's not putting out many 1-pointers these days. He's really
he's not. At the top spot, 2008, around 15, Geelong versus Fremantle. Do you want to have a guess?
Geelong and Fremantle?
Fremantle.
Is that 2018, did you say?
So 2008.
Oh, 2008.
Geelong
Can't tell
Fremantle.
you much about the 2008 Fremantle side.
These are both Geelong players.
Oh, okay. Well, I should know that team by rote.
You should. Truly famous team. So in 2008, round 15, Joel Corey Enright with 127 and 176 respectively for a total of 303. Just beating out Kieran Jack Watts.
Oh, well.
52, 150 for 302.
There's a few going around now. We could have a Jack Steele side bottom.
Exactly.
Steele side bottom hasn't been putting many good games out. Jack Steele certainly has. Anyway, very, very interesting, these World Cups.
The best Jack Steele side bottom we have is for a total of 215. So they're about 100 points off the pace if they truly want to take on the top dogs.
Yeah, what about Zach Dawson-Simpson?
Zach Dawson-Simpson. Wow, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, aren't we? Zach Dawson-Simpson, total for 141 is their best, but the worst is 76.
That was just off the top of my head too.
Pretty good performer.
Any other ones we want to check out before we move on?
That's me done on those, to be honest. I did want to mention Jared Lyons as 150th. Of course, picked up by the Lions after being delisted at the Suns, and a lot of talk in the press this week about that. I had a message come through, sorry to steal your mailbag segment, Liam, about Jared Lyons asking whether he was the first player to make 150 games after being delisted twice. Technically not delisted twice because Adelaide actually traded him for some low draft picks. I think there was a salary cap issue. He wanted a bit more money than they were willing to pay. So only technically delisted once, but it did get me into one of my wormholes. I found Martin Pike, who a triple premiership player with Brisbane, actually won a premiership with North Melbourne. He was delisted twice and he made it to 247 games in total. I think a couple of those delistings were due to his love of having a few beers. And also I had Dale Kickett. He was actually delisted twice and traded twice. He ended up playing 186 games. So you can get delisted a couple of times and still have a really good AFL career. Anything else from either of you guys across the weekend?
I did see that Patrick Dangerfield got some sort of monster Supercoach score. I believe he is now the only player to have had 180 points in a game without being the number one ranked player on the ground twice.
Oh, wow.
So he was behind Darcy Parish this week. And it's just eluding me right now, but he's done it before. He had another 180 plus point game where he didn't come first. So we do know Danger loves the limelight, and I do suspect that would irritate him a little bit.
I saw one of the most ill-timed comments by commentator Cameron Ling. Obviously, Geelong down by 4 goals. What a time. He gave Dangerfield a big serve, and then he had to 2.5 quarters later retract that completely as Danger actually turned the game in Geelong's favour.
I'd make fun of Cameron Link for that bit if my group chats ever leaked at quarter time of the game. I think I'd certainly be accused of agreeing with Cameron Ling there.
All right, so that was the highlights of the week. Plenty of useless stat highlights through round 16.
Who scored votes this week in the Brownlow medal?
This was a very tough round. It seems that every round gets tougher. But in exciting news, I've actually got 2 new players into the votes this week. The first one is a Gold Coast player, a son. I had to give Ben Ainsworth 5 because anyone that can contribute to the demise of Richmond in a major way has to be highly regarded, especially if they're wearing a moustache. And it's not that we hate Richmond, it's just that they've had their time. So well done to Ainsworth. He had 20 disposals, 11 score involvements, 3 goal assists and 1 goal himself. He probably should have got more because he also made our inaccurate team of the week, kicking 1 goal for, but good performance by Ainsworth across the half-forward line there.
Yeah, and he's also fairly new to the mustache. Would you agree, Della?
Yes, I think it's his first year with a mustache, which leads me to my 4 votes in Bailey Dale. He's also new to the mustache. I believe he's probably one of the league's most improved players, and I think we could probably put that down to the mustache as well, along with his transformation to the halfback line. He had a great game, 602 metres gains, 23 disposals, and he kicked 2 goals. You don't get many multiple goal kickers off the halfback line. Another cracking game by him. 3 votes to Libba. He also kicked 2 goals. One of them was a bit of a dodgy 50, but it was there. I don't really like that running in the protected zone rule, but well done to him with that. 25 touches, 6 marks, 5 tackles and 8 clearances. And he is in the lead now for the Brownlow. He could be very hard to catch. Libba is been very good this year. I'll touch on the leaderboard in a sec. Now, the 2 votes, a guy who made the headlines in Cameron Zerha with his new little collie dog. Playing the dogs, it was no surprise that he had another great game, given he's got the new dog. He had 4 goals and 1 goal assist with 14 disposals and 4 marks. He was definitely North Melbourne's best forward, so well-deserved 2 for him. And 1 vote to a guy who could be in the running in future years, because I think he's got a bit of potential in Tom Atkins. He has a few other contenders at the Cats to battle with for votes, but he had 29 disposals, 13 contested, 6 tackles, 5 marks, 8 intercept possessions, and I've snuck him in for the 1 just ahead of Warple, Tui, Hewitt, Tom Stewart, Scott Lysett, Zane Cordy and Isaac Smith. So that was a lot of good games by Mo Wearers this week. Probably none really super outstanding ones, but those 5 guys got my nod. And
yeah, Tom Atkins I believe he had career high disposals,
Yes.
29, and also brought it up in his 50th game. So surely a milestone man.
Yeah, good. And I think he might be one of the original Mo wearers. He's had the Mo for a while now.
Just quickly on Tom Atkins, unfortunately it was a VFL game, but very on brand for us. He once had 26 disposals and 26 tackles in a game in the VFL, which should he have done it in AFL would be, the record most tackles ever, but easily the most anyone's ever matched the two.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the leaderboard, Liberatore 27, Tex Walker 23, Tom Stewart 22. Tom Stewart actually had a funny game. He had like a stack of it in the first quarter, nothing really in the second and third, and then a stack of it again in the last. But I couldn't squeeze him in. I missed him out due to consistency. So he's third on 22. Lever and Dale, with Dale getting the 4 this week, are on 21. So I think it's probably out of those 5. Definitely set up for a thrilling finish in the Mo Award.
Deep Dive with Bill.
Topic for the deep dive this week. Basically, what I looked at is the amount of disposals someone gets, but rather than looking at just the raw number, I looked at sort of what percentage of the disposals they earned. This was sort of inspired by looking at a chart of disposals over time. And I mean, anyone that's watched footy knows this. Games in the late 1960s and early 1970s, you'd expect about 250 disposals a game. That's per team. Nowadays, that's 350. So there's been disposal inflation, Della.
Yes, CPI of disposals.
Yes, it's gone up quite sharply, sort of around 07, 08, when the housing market crashed. Disposals went through a period of intense hyperinflation, going from 300 a game to 350 real quick. You used to see a player, 1 in every 100 games, a player played, they get 30 touches. Now it's more like 7 out of 100. So it's a lot more regular, and it never sat well with me because you talk about Tom Mitchell and McRae. And
McRae's on a run of 30 plus disposal games.
Yes, and not to take anything away from him, but it's not what it used to be. Getting 30 touches in the 70s was very rare, and these days, you sort by most disposals on the app, and you expect to see players with 30 plus. So, thought I'd have a bit of a look through history and sort players not by disposals, but rather by their percentage contribution, if you will. And I found a couple of pretty amazing games. Bob Skilton, round 1, 1965, he had 37 disposals, which in the modern game you would say is a fair few, but his team only had 185 in total. So his 37 represented 20% of his team's disposals that day, which is the record. In fact, our records for disposals only go back to round 1, 1965. So that record was set immediately and has gone unbroken since let's call it the dawn of statistics in the AFL.
So if we adjust for inflation, that 37 disposals is probably equivalent to about 70 disposals in the modern game.
It's not quite doubled. It's gone from about 250 a game to 350. So what's that? That's 7 over 5. Doing some quick maths here. That's the equivalent of sort of 52 disposals, which is up close to the record.
I was going on the fact his team only had about 170, and now we're having 350, but maybe it's a low disposal game.
It was a low disposal game.
52 is only 2 off Tom Mitchell's record.
Yes, Tom Mitchell's nowhere near the top of this list.
Oh, wow.
They're all sort of old-timey players. Bob Skilton's in the top 5 twice. You got Diesel Williams, Kevin Bartlett is in the top 5, and Paul Roos in there as well.
I can tell you, Diesel Williams, I watched a lot of his games when he was playing for Sydney and Carlton. He used to just stand in the centre square and wait for the ball to come to him. He didn't run much, but he was uncanny. He knew where it was going to go.
He did it with a sort of unquestionably high disposal game. He got 53 out of 301, which is 17.6%. So that sits beneath Bob Skilton on the percentage in second place, but 53 touches is a lot of touches, no matter how you measure it.
And you also mentioned Kevin Bartlett, and I believe all of those were kicks, weren't they?
I did think that he strangely had 11 handballs this game. So he had 26 and 11 for 37 disposals out of 234. So that's 15.8%, good enough for fourth place. You have to scroll a long way down the list before you start to see a modern player that the sort of top 50 are sort of pre-2000. So it goes to show like the modern players do break a lot of records for disposals, but obviously the nature of the game has changed. And these sort of players like Diesel Williams and Kevin Bartlett were racking it up without necessarily getting the switch kicks and the release handballs that the modern players do. So an interesting way to compare modern to old. I got to go through the highest percentage a team has had out of the game. So what percentage, if a game has 100 disposals, for example, does a team get 50-50 or is it 70-30? This list is pretty uninteresting, except for the fact that Geelong has 4 of the top 5 games. So so I've got to go through the top one here. Geelong v West Coast in 2008, round 22, in the lead up to a final series that no one really remembers how it ended. Geelong had 451 disposals. West Coast only had 215. So Geelong had over 2/3 of the disposals in that game. The only time a team has ever had more than 2/3 of the disposals.
Oh, that's a smashing. I'm sure the scoreboard reflected that.
I didn't actually bother to look up the score, but I believe the 2008 Cats didn't lose a lot of games. Except for a fairly important one at the end where Stewie Doo bobbed up. And then, of course, there are the percentages of a team's year's disposal. So Gary Wilson for Fitzroy in 78, he had 646 disposals. Fitzroy that year had 5,960. So he had 10.8% of Fitzroy's disposals that year. That's the highest players ever done. Only 7 players have ever had 10% or more. No one has done it since the year 2000. Robert Harvey was the most recent in 98. So that's something that no one's done for decades. Sort of, makes you think about Tom Mitchell's sort of, sounds like I'm ragging on him. I actually like Mitchell, but his sort of place in history, I think, is a bit bolstered by the nature of the modern game.
So if we look at, so it was the 60s and the 70s to the modern day, so say 30, 40 years, if we project forward another 30, 40 years, if we go forward and say we're going to have another 100-odd disposals per game, we'll be up near the 450s.
Yes, well, the teams do manage to bob up and get, 450-odd disposals in a game.
Well, Sydney had 436 against West Coast on the weekend.
Geelong 2011 against Melbourne in quite the lopsided affair had 510. Whoa. So teams do get up around that sort of 450, 500 mark. But another leap beyond that, you're suggesting, what if we get to 600? What if we get to 700 disposals? The average player gets about 6% of disposals a game. So the average player would be at 40 plus. With players starting to flirt with 70 disposals. And look, the easiest way to do that would be to make the games longer, which has happened through time. I don't think the AFL is going to head in that direction, though. So we might need some new strategic developments in order to get there.
Well, the other thing that's happened is I think scoring's gone down. So maybe we'll probably be seeing 600 or 700 disposals, but only 5 to 8 goals, which we sometimes see now anyway. And also free kicks. Free kicks used to be really high in the 60s and 70s, and now they're comparatively lower. They used to range in the 50s and 60s for teams.
Perhaps
now they're in the
Perhaps on for next week is to look at the highest percentage of disposals that came from free kicks. I suspect the 1970s would be where to look there, with the relatively high number of free kicks and low number of disposals. Maybe there's a game where some insane percentage of the disposals were umpire given. So we might have to look into that for next week.
The other thing that's also changed is the ratio of kicks to handballs. So I think if we're getting 700 disposals, I reckon 500 of them will probably be handballs. So probably just go handball, like a production line down the field, which would be a bit sad. Hopefully we don't get to that. All right, Bill, thanks for that. I might see if I can find any Bob Skilton highlights during the week to have a look at his craft on the football field.
I do get asked if I'm related to him for some regularity, but my name is Skilton, not Skilton, so a little unsure why people think I'd be related to him, but he does come up a lot in my life.
Well, he's a good player to be related to. You might change your answer now that you know he's got that 20%.
Now it's time for Liam's mailbag.
Some questions coming through. This first one comes from Gary Gazar. Not sure if this has been covered, but wondering who has the most possessions in a game without scoring, and subsequently the most possessions in the season without scoring anything. So when we think about these types of players, particularly in a game you'd probably think of a midfielder that just, hasn't been able to score anything. But over the course of the season, you're thinking more in terms of a backman. So I'll read out the top one for you at the moment. We have Tom Mitchell, 55 possessions for no goals and no behinds, 2018 round one for Hawthorn. That's quite an effort, 55 disposals.
Tom Mitchell's on blast today.
Exactly.
It's a Tom Mitchell podcast.
Tom Mitchell fancast, exactly. Second place, we have Gary Ablett, 52 disposals, 2012 round 10 for the Gold Coast Suns, 52 possessions for no goals.
Probably Gold Coast didn't score too much in that game.
Yeah, it's safe to assume 2012 they didn't get much luck in there. But he's equal with Lachie Neale, 52 possessions for nothing. Surprisingly, in 2019, round 23. So not when Brisbane were really bad in the early 2010s, but when they were really, really good in 2019. So 52 possessions for no goals and no behinds.
Well,
so we can also have a look at the season totals.
This is the one I'm really interested about.
In the top two spots, we have Josh Gibson, 434 possessions for no goals, no behinds in 2011. And then in 2013, he had 428 possessions for no goals and no behinds. So truly stuck down back.
Happen to know how many he got in the year in between those?
Yes. He had a dry run from 2010 to 2014 where he had no goals and no behinds for a total of roughly anywhere between 300 and 400 disposals and possessions.
Yeah, wow. It looks like he's had, potentially very close to 2,000 disposals in a row. We'll have to look into exactly what that is.
Yeah, so that's over a span of 4 years. So good on him. And in third place, we have Heath Grundy, 424 possessions with no goals and no behinds. And rounding out the top 10, we also have Nick Haynes, Cal Hooker, Michael Hurley, Heath Grundy again, Alex Rance, Joel McDonald, and Rance again. So really kind of your key defender demographic going on here.
Yeah, it's surprising that even those stay-at-home defenders occasionally will sneak forward and kick even a point or something during a season. So to not kick anything for an entire year and get 400-odd disposals, that's a big effort.
One player we do have our eye on is Tom Cleary. He's had 1,200 disposals with no goals and no behinds either in his 7-year career. So good on him. He's just played over 100 games. If anyone is going to take the mantle of truly not kicking a goal or behind, it'd be Tom Cleary. He's got absolutely nothing for his 1,200 disposals.
Just quickly check. Josh Gibson went at least 1,809 disposals without scoring in that stretch. I don't know exactly what disposal in the game he scored it with, so it's likely a few higher than that unless he scored his first disposal breaking that streak, but it's at least 1,809.
So Tom Cleary needs about another 600 disposals in a row without a goal to break that record.
I tell you, if we factor in inflation, the disposal inflation, Dennis Pagan, he played in the 70s, he kicked 2 goals in his first year and then 3 in his second, but his next 8 seasons, which was the rest of his career, he had 1,800 disposals. He didn't kick a goal or a behind. That was a good effort for Dennis Pagan, the master coach. I believe Rod Carter, another one that had a stack of games without kicking a goal. So he's another one to check out.
On to the next question, we have Sean Webster. What's the greatest discrepancy in scoring shots for a team who has the most scoring shots but loses? So this is in relation to the Fremantle versus Carlton game, I believe. Freo, yes. 8 goals 16 to Carlton's 12 goals 8. So despite having a +4 differential in scoring shots, they still lost the game.
A classic Freo.
Classic Freo. Fortunately for you, Freo don't appear in this next stat. We're back to the days of Fitzroy. 1957, round 4, Fitzroy versus Richmond. They finished the game on 10 goals 31, losing to Richmond 16 goals 10 for a scoring differential of 15, which is an equal record with 1977, round 16, Collingwood versus Geelong. Collingwood with 12 goals, 25, losing to Geelong, 16 goals, 6, a differential of 15.
There was also two other teams this round who lost with more shots. One was Collingwood, who kicked 8-13 to Saints 10-10, and the other one was Melbourne, who kicked 7-13 to GWS's 9-10. So 3 teams this round had more scoring shots but lost the game. That could be close to a record, I suppose.
This next question comes in from Twitter, from an eagle-eyed observer that recognised that Richmond versus Gold Coast had the same amount of goals at each quarter-time break. Truly amazing. This is the 11th time this has happened in AFL history. So Gold Coast and Richmond going 2 goals at the first quarter, 5, 8 and 10 throughout the game. So this is just the 11th time it's happened. One that really stood out to me was Sydney versus Collingwood, 2004, round 4. We have 3 goals in the first quarter, 7 in the second, 12 in the third, 15 at the end of the game, all equal to each other. Ended up with a Collingwood win, 106 to 101.
Highest scoring occurrence of that by the sounds of it.
Yes, that is correct.
What about the biggest win when both teams kick the same amount of goals each quarter?
Those honours go to Melbourne, 1944, round 15, Melbourne versus Geelong. The quarters went 1, 4, 4, 8. So Melbourne ended up on 69 and Geelong finished on 56 for a difference of 13. The biggest margin where all the goals are the same at each of the quarter breaks.
If I've done my maths right, that would have been 8-21 to 8-8. Amazing. Truly amazing.
And I believe that is the end of the mailbag.
Well, I've actually pulled a stat. We were speaking just before we hit record about Luke Dalhouse, and I saw that he had 35 Brownlow votes for the Western Bulldogs and has 0 for Geelong right now. This isn't really a mailbag. It's more of a question I asked before we started, but I've been looking into it. There's a few players that have had more votes at their first club and have gone on to get 0 votes for their second club, but typically it's a superstar that goes to play 1 season at their second club or gets injured. So with the minimum qualifier of 50 games at the second club, Luke Dalhouse is actually ranked number 1 all time by most votes at their first club to go on to get 0 votes at their second club. Now, potentially being a bit unfair on him, they haven't given out the votes this year, so maybe he has earned one. We don't know about yet.
I've watched most of Geelong's games, and I'll highly
I'd be shocked.
doubt that.
I'd be shocked. He's in front of Chris Tarrant at Collingwood, who had 29 votes, had 0 at Fremantle. Michael Mansfield's in the top 3 from the olden days. Brian Lake. Damien Hardwicker is in there too, but Luke Dalhouse is currently number 1. Maybe he gets a vote somewhere before he retires with Geelong and he'll be disqualified from this list, but as of right now, he's number 1.
You wouldn't put any money on it, that's for sure. Amazing. We might have to chuck that up on Facebook at some stage during the week. That's a good one, Bill. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to quickly mention a post we did today to do with tall coxes and Viagra. And I'm glad we got that one out there because I think up there with questions about tattoos and long sleeves, questions about tall players named Cox has been dominating our inbox for quite a long period of time. And we finally came up with a post to answer all those questions once and for all.
We get a few questions from people whose last name happens coincidentally, I'm sure, to be Cox. Very interested in this record.
Anyway, we've finally answered that one. It's officially on our page, so we can direct people to that.
And we never have to answer it again. Thank God for that.
Yeah. Let's just hope the next Cox in the system is another tall one, so it doesn't change the dynamic of the result. All right then, guys. Thanks once again. We got through a stack of stats in this one. Mm-hmm. Anyone out there that hasn't already seen our Facebook page and somehow stumbled upon the podcast, check out that because we post content every day. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast or subscribe to the YouTube if you're catching it on there. Otherwise, we'll see you again next week for some more useless stats. Cheers, boys.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Della.
Thanks for listening to Unnecessary Statness, the Useless AFL Stats podcast. Subscribe or follow on Facebook for more useless stat-related content.